City of Destruction, an audio drama by JesusForSinners.com, Episode 20.
There, Susan.
You're doing great, Mom.
We're just going right over to your chair, Susan. Just a few more steps, honey.
Good job, Mom.
Looks like you got your workout for today, Susan.
I'm glad to be home.
We're glad you're home too, Mom.
I love you too.
We love you too, Mom.
Are you hungry, Susan?
No.
You should have something to eat, Mom.
How about some soup, Susan? We can all have some. I'm going to make us some soup. Can you give me a hand in the kitchen, Mark?
Yeah. We'll be right back, Mom. She's got to be hungry. She didn't have anything for breakfast.
I think she's uncomfortable with us having to feed her. She's so used to taking care of us. I think the idea of not being able to even feed herself has her really depressed.
Yeah. I guess, in a way, it's kind of good that we're both home now to take care of her, I mean.
Yeah, in a weird way, God has us both in a position to be here for her. Although I know your mom wouldn't want you to put your career on hold to take care of her.
What career? I've spent most of my time after graduation being unemployed. I really need to find something now, though. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of extra costs now, taking care of Mom.
And the medical bills. I'm afraid to even think about what those are going to look like. Then there's the physical therapy. Plus, your mom obviously can't work anymore. I think I might have to look into selling the house.
What? Sell the house? But this is our home, Dad. This is where I've spent my whole life. And Mom, she loves this house. She'd be devastated if we had to move.
We don't have a lot of options, Mark. I don't know how we're going to pay the medical bills, and my pension wasn't enough to cover our expenses before this happened.
Oh, man. The house. When are you going to tell Mom?
Well, first things first. I need to talk to a real estate agent and see what we can get for it. It might not matter anyway, and maybe the medical bills won't be as bad as I'm thinking they're going to be. We'll just wait to say anything to your mother. She sure doesn't need something else to worry about.
Well, that does it. I need to go out and find a job. Any job. Even if it isn't in the computer industry. Our family needs help. I can't just wait around for the perfect opportunity anymore.
I know you've been trying, son, and I appreciate that you go out every day looking for work. But I'm sorry, son. Any job you could get would be a big help right now. I'm going to have to stay home and take care of your mother. We can't really afford to have someone come in. We're all going to have to do what we can.
Don't worry, Dad. God will get us through this.
I'm glad to hear you say that, son. You seemed kind of mad at God before.
Yeah, I feel terrible about that. I asked him to forgive me. How could I be mad at God after everything he's done for me? He saved me from hell. He changed who I am. Jesus gave everything for me. What right could I have to be mad at him? Nothing in this life is as bad as what he saved me from. I pray that I never act that way towards him again.
We're really going to need him to get us through this. This is as big of a test as I've ever had in my life. I'm sure this family's never gone through anything this difficult. Can you imagine what people who don't have God in their life would be going through at a time like this?
I wouldn't even want to imagine.
Thankfully, we don't have to.
The lights are all out, and the organ is turned off.
Everything's locked up.
There weren't many people here today.
Well, the Sawyers just got Susan home from the hospital yesterday. Bill called me and said they weren't going to be able to make it this morning. They're still getting her settled in.
That poor family. It's amazing how God strengthened them through all that they've been going through lately.
Yes, they're sure going to need a lot of prayer. Bill was saying he's really concerned about the medical expenses associated with all this.
Yes, it seems like finances are an issue for everyone. Did you see the church's bank balance last month?
Yes, I'm afraid our bank account is shrinking even faster than our congregation.
I noticed the Martins have stopped coming, and the Olsons, and the Travers.
The wheat and the chaff, Carol, the wheat and the chaff. People don't mind being identified with God as long as it doesn't cost them anything. But when people have to take a stand for God, well, that's when you see who's willing to deny themselves, take up their crosses, and follow Jesus. Or maybe they just didn't want to belong to a church whose pastor has criminal charges pending against him.
Oh, I've been praying that those charges get dropped. The last thing we need are any more problems right now.
I've been praying too, believe me. That reminds me, we're supposed to meet the public defender tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock so she can go over some things with us before the hearing at 10.
Do you think the judge will accept the plea deal?
I sure hope so. I have nothing against admitting that I passed out a gospel tract. But if I'm asked to admit that I was wrong for telling people that Jesus is the only way to the Father, well, I won't do that.
Oh, Harold, what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen to us, to this church?
I don't know, Carol, but I know that God does. Here's my chance to practice what I preach. We're just going to have to trust Him, Carol, and pray for strength.
How could this happen?
At least he's not in prison, Carol. After what he said in there, I'm amazed she didn't lock him up.
$25,000? How are we going to pay that? My husband's a pastor of a small church. We don't have that kind of money. I thought you said he'd likely get off with a warning. You're our lawyer. We trusted you.
Hey, I had the plea deal all arranged. If he just would have admitted that he broke the law, this whole thing would have been over.
I admitted handing out the gospel tract, but there's no way I could deny that Jesus is the only way to be saved.
And that's why you got the $25,000 fine and 3 years probation. The judge wanted to teach you a lesson. You should be thankful she didn't decide to let you learn that lesson from inside a prison cell.
3 years. What does that mean? He's a pastor. Does that mean he can't preach anymore?
No, it doesn't mean that. He just can't preach hate. We don't allow things like that in this city. It's illegal. If he does it again, he probably will wind up in prison. Mr. and Mrs. Jennings, I don't think you understand how serious this is. Today could have gone a lot worse. You just need to stay out of trouble. Mr. Jennings, you're on the hate offenders registry now. They're going to be watching you. Your probation officer is going to be monitoring your activities, and if there are any complaints against you or your church, you'll be right back in here, and I can assure you it will not go as smoothly next time.
Smoothly. We have a fine we can't possibly afford to pay. My husband is on a watch list, and if he preaches the gospel, he could get arrested again.
Carol, calm down.
But Harold!
I know. We'll talk about it later. Thank you, Miss Jacobs. I appreciate your help.
Mr. Jennings, just keep all of this stuff in your church and stay out of trouble.
Harold, what are we going to do?
The first thing we're going to do is thank God that I'm not in prison.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm very thankful that you're not locked up, but Harold, how are you going to preach? How are any of us supposed to share the gospel with people?
That's a good question, Carol. I can't believe this is happening. They've effectively outlawed the sharing of the gospel. I guess we're just going to have to be a lot more careful on how we do this.
And what about your preaching, Harold? You can't just ignore parts of the Bible.
No, Carol, I can't, and I won't. I'm just going to continue preaching the word in season and now very much out of season.
Oh, I can't believe all this is happening. How can the gospel be illegal in this city? We're all at risk of being arrested if we share our faith with people.
We're going to have to discuss this as a congregation. How do we go about sharing the gospel in this environment? We're also going to have to focus more on our people, how we will survive in this city now. Discipleship is going to be more important than ever. This is looking a lot more like the early church every day.
Oh, yes, it is.
Well, God got those early Christians through that time.
Not all of them made it through alive, though, Harold.
No, that's true. But God gave them the strength to be faithful even until death. I'd say that's more important.
Oh, Harold, what are we going to do?
Trust Him, Carol. We're going to trust Him no matter what.